Welcome back to this episode of Rich Lessons. We are super excited to have one of my great friends here, Ronaldo Hardy. I'm going to read a couple of snippets from your bio, but there's so much more that is to be said, really, in this episode. So I'm going to let him get into it. Ronaldo is a change agent with a strong ability to bring optimal results to anything he is a part of, and I'm a witness to that. He's a two-time credit union CEO, former consulting firm owner, former CEO of a national association in the credit union industry, and current CEO of Balance, a national leader in financial education and counseling, with a passion for helping leaders and organizations break free from mediocrity to create cultures of boldness, trust, and innovation. He is also an amazing pastor to a tremendous congregation of individuals that I know who definitely sing his praises on a continuous basis. And we're just excited to have you here on Rich Lessons podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So let's jump into it. I gave like a snippet of your background, but we want to hear from you. How would you describe yourself and your work?
Absolutely. So I would define it first by what has become my personal mission statement. So a few years ago, I went on a journey to really pull together all of the complexities of my life and the things that I do. And I said I wanted definition for how I would journey forward. And I came up with change the world by building the people who would change the world. And when I really break that down and sum it all up, I'm a people builder. And so I do that in so many different ways. I was just telling you recently, I have that issue where people are like, well, you do so many different things. And, people try to really put me in a box. And I'm like, well, I really don't do so many different things. I do one thing many different ways. I wake up every day to build people, and I get the opportunity to do that first and foremost in my household. So making sure that my family gets the best of me. And then I move that out into different lanes, whether that's pastoring a church or leading organizations. I love what it looks like to watch growth journeys. So my favorite growth journeys to watch happen to be people, and I get to grow people in the context of organizations because we all know people who grow organizations. And so I get up and I have fun every day doing that. I've had the opportunity professionally to do that in financial services. So I've had a career, which is crazy to say now. I've been in financial services over 2 decades. And that was purely accidental. We might get into that in a little while. But that's what I would say about what I do.
That's excellent. Now, let's start with where you're currently the CEO. So when you think about like Balance, can you tell us a little bit about that? And I am also curious to know what got you into the finance path. Like, what took you down the finance path? Sheena obviously is also very much so woven into the financial path as well. So y'all probably have a lot of synergy there. But I'm curious to know what brought you to that space.
Absolutely. So, Balance is a national financial wellness nonprofit, and we do work in several different lanes of really uplifting people. Historically, it's been really about uplifting those who are marginalized. And right now, we're in this evolution in the vision that I brought to the table around really how much wider we need to reach with that. Because I think that people think that financial wellness is only for a marginalized category. And we've lived long enough and interacted with people enough to know that this concept of being financially well, savvy, having the information you need, it crosses generational barriers, ethnic barriers, socioeconomic barriers, because we don't even talk about when you're the first to access some things and
Mm-hmm.
how overwhelming that is, and how you may need support as you're growing. And so we've historically done work in helping people with housing, counseling, and coaching to help people get into homes, but also to remain there. We do work in debt management. We do work in student loan debt counseling. We even have some levels of financial planning for the future. So really, we run the gamut on what we have, information and or access to tools and resources to help consumers with. I feel that we're in position now with the evolution that we're about to undergo, really integrating a technology tool so that we can reach new generations who really need our support, but they don't go after it in the traditional ways that older generations or previous generations did. But also, really kind of meeting the moment. I feel that there's this overwhelming amount of stress that's happening in so many different households around financial status and wellness. And can I make it with what I make right now? For me, I did not plan to get into financial services at all. By the time I was about to graduate from high school, and I'm pretty sure you all will remember this push, our generation was heavily pushed to go to school in computer science. If you
Mm-hmm.
were smart, they were like, you're going to school in computer science. So I'm like, I'm going to school in computer science because I've always performed well academically, and I did do a portion of my college experience in my studies in computer science. And in hindsight, I'm like, while I love that knowledge base, clearly, I should never be programming all day. Like that was that would
What
be
did
a,
you finish?
I did not finish in computer science. I finished in
I
business.
feel you.
Uh huh.
I took a computer science class in college too. Feel you.
You understand?
I feel it so deep in my soul because I took a C++ class
Come on.
and I will never forget this class in my life because I was like, okay, I know how to do my own UI UX. I can design. I got the vision. Let me just code it myself. I'm just gonna do it from top to bottom myself. I took a C++ class. And I knew by not even the end of that class, I knew in the middle of that class, I am not taking now one more computer science class. This is it for me. Because one semicolon,
Could literally destroy everything, the if then statements and all. I know I'm bringing you back, right? I'm like, what was I
count me
thinking?
out.
That's not it. Nothing about that brought joy to my
Count me
life.
out.
Count me out as well, right?
So I felt it. I felt it
So
in my
clearly,
soul.
I came from a very small, very small town. Tia was on. She actually went to computer science too, and she
Mhm.
said because at St. Joseph, her school, they were like the first where everyone in the class had computers, and so they did all their work on computers like back in the day, like 20
Yeah.
years ago. And so they were pushed to go into computer science. We was just like, if you go to college, you made it. We don't care what you majored in. You went to college, bravo. What you majored in, it don't matter.
You just had to get there, right? We just need you to cross the
If you
finish
get there,
line.
you already didn't defy the odds. So I
Man.
actually love the fact that I was kind of pushed to the computer science, even if it
Well,
wasn't.
I
I'm
wasn't
happy I
pushed to
found
it.
your
Mine was
way.
tech. I just love tech. And I was like, I couldn't find anyone to code what I
Hmm.
needed. So I was like, I figured out myself. I'll just learn the code. And the fact they put me in that C++ class as my very first computer science class, I was like,
It was enough,
it's
right?
It was
enough.
enough,
It was enough. I'm like, this is not it for me. And
but that
gratefully,
wasn't for you.
it wasn't for me. And I have this theory that if we are doing the right things will come to us. And so I was actually working at McDonald's my senior year in high school, and it was around the last 6 weeks that I started this job at the community bank. But the local head teller came into McDonald's of all places, and my parents had really embedded in me they would say excellence is ever improving. I've since iterated around that and said I say excellence is a moving target, right?
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that if I'm going to continue to hit the mark of excellence, then I need to be willing to evolve ongoing, because what was excellent yesterday may not be excellent tomorrow. So I've had this mindset a long time, and I'm in McDonald's, and I'm like, I'm going to be excellent here. I was a crew leader in high school, and I'm getting a chance to lead people. And she came in one day. She said, "Every time I come in here, you're so friendly. You get my order right, which is a big deal at McDonald's." I always joke. I say, I couldn't fix the ice cream machine. I did the best that I could do, right? But one day she said, "You would really be perfect on our teller line. Would you consider coming to work here?" That one conversation has led me down an entire journey that I never planned for. And I did a little less than 2 years at that bank, and then I went to go work for what was Hibernia at the time before
Mm-hmm.
Capital One came in and purchased them, which I always think is a cool story that when Capital One decided to come into banking, they came to a bank, that was so prevalent in Louisiana. I worked there for a bit. Only place I ever got fired from, which is its own story in itself. And then I went to go and work in call centers for about a year before getting a call one day from a credit union that someone else had sent my resume in. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even know that my resume was sent there at a. It had been sent a long time before that moment because I had been looking for a job. And randomly, this particular day, I had a weird interaction with my supervisor. And within 20 minutes, I'd sit down and I get this call, and I was so confused. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
who are you? What? I'm thinking to myself, when they hired me, it really must have been for me because if they based it off that one phone call, clearly they should have said,
Mm-hmm.
"Don't even come in here." But I went to interview for that role in their call center, and that opened up a career that I could not have imagined. And I've been in financial services now over 2 decades. Of course, like you said earlier, I've had the
Yes.
chance. It was unbelievable to me at the stage that I got a chance to be CEO the first time, and then again, and so on and so forth. I've been able to do a number of different things that I never planned on doing. I just ended up doing what I was supposed to do.
Now, fun fact, by the way, like one in every like 7 or 8 millionaires worked at McDonald's. Did you know that?
Really? I
Yeah. I
didn't.
also worked at McDonald's, by the way, when I was a sophomore, junior in high school. But yeah, like and I'm sure that's changing now because there's
Yeah.
just way more fast food restaurants. There's more places people can work. But it's like one in every 7 or 8 millionaires have worked at McDonald's.
So I have to ask really quickly: does the machine actually not work, or do y'all purposely
It.
say it doesn't
I
work
was
so y'all
never
don't have to give us
on
ice
the ice
cream?
cream machine. I was back flipping the burgers. So-
No, it really doesn't work at times, but it's crazy. When it is working, when you work there too, we found all different kinds of ways to do very cool things that were not on the menu with it. But that's an interesting stat, and I guess
Yeah.
it's cool to be in the alumni. Who would have
Yeah, I
known,
guess.
right?
Who would be alone, I guess.
Of
I don't know.
McDonald's,
McDonald's
right?
good. Back in the day, I guess the right people were coming in.
Yes,
And
yes,
the
yes.
right connections were happening. So something was working right with just nurturing the future generation. But you also are a pastor.
Hmm.
And so, okay, you're going down this career path, but obviously you're still called to the ministry.
Yes.
I know your father was also a pastor.
Yes.
And so, how does that connect into your work? And when did you realize, oh, this is also my calling?
Absolutely. So interestingly enough, I have always had a unique journey with God, like since I was a kid. Hearing the first time I heard the voice of God and I knew that I did, I was four, or my journey through just different stages of my growth in my ministry, gifts and callings. And my parents were very intentional about really helping us to develop a relationship with God, which as I've gotten older, I've had my own iteration around that and my understanding of several things gone deeper in the scripture because I think the millennial generation, we're interesting in that I think in every facet we were like, what didn't y'all tell us? We
Mm-hmm.
want to know, right? So, but they were so committed to us understanding the grounding that a relationship with God, does in our lives. Now, I did not want to pastor because in my experience, my parents were entrepreneurs before they decided to go full time in the ministry. And, they were earning six figures, when I was very young, up until like the age 5 or 6. So I didn't really understand. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, mom and dad doing their thing. They have their business. When they went into ministry full time and decided to walk away from that, all these theories people have that pastors, they were really taking all the money and that was not the case.
Mm-hmm.
My parents earned $25,000 combined and
Mm-hmm.
raised a family with no governmental assistance. That's what I was raised in. So from my perspective, while I loved God and I loved ministry, I was like, I'm gonna need some money.
Right,
I'm
right.
gonna need some money. I need some financial stability. So for me, I had no aspiration to lead a church. And when I was younger, of course, people would say, "You're going to do this." And at the time, it's like, "Oh, yeah, okay."
Mm-hmm.
But when I got to an age where I'm like, I'm ready to make money, my thoughts were, this is going to get in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I actually, I was about a year or two into my first CEO job and realizing like I was ahead of schedule because I was 27 when I first became CEO. And so I'm looking, I'm like, well, by the age of 40, I'll have more than a decade in. I was thinking, if I'm willing to move around, I'm knowing kind of how that pay grows, and it gets crazy in this lane in terms of
Mm-hmm.
retirement, just things that you can get. And so I'm thinking we're going to move out of state.
Mm-hmm.
We ain't starting no church. And then the Lord was like, nope, you're actually going to stay right here and you're going to start a church. And I really had an issue with that initially because I was trying to figure out how the two would flow together. I knew that I was not leaving one for the other, that I would be bivocational. I knew that that would confuse a lot of people. I knew professionally, some people would say, wait, is he just doing this until the church takes off? And I knew in the church, it's like, wait, are you going to commit to this full time at some point? And what I've seen is they both help each other. So, what I've been able to do from a business and career perspective has given me a unique perspective as a pastor. Like we actually write real strategic plans for the church, and
Mm-hmm.
we bring that business mindset there. But then who I am as a pastor, because who I am as a person is a people builder, it shows up professionally. So I really can see how sometimes that pastoral lens helps me professionally, and how I'm able to leverage my relationship with God to even make good business decisions. It's very interesting,
Yeah.
so they all, for me, flow together, and they all begin to flow together better when I got that singularity of purpose and vision, and me even recognizing, no, I'm getting up to build people every day, and I may have to hop in and out of lanes to do that, but it's all possible. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that they both help me out, and I think that both benefit from the other. And I've also gotten to a place where on both sides, I think they know, okay, we're safe. He isn't going anywhere on
Yeah.
either side.
I'm curious to know, what do you feel is like the future of the church? And particularly as we know it. Like, I grew up in a very traditional Baptist
Mhm.
church, and like the mass choir,
Yes.
Yeah.
the all
I'm from
men's
Mississippi,
choir.
so we
Oh,
are.
Come
right.
on.
Listen.
Mississippi Mass Choir, right?
Right.
Well, Gen Z's all is very different. They either they don't go to
Yes.
church or it's like virtual
And
church
so that's why I'm curious
or
to know, how do you feel church is shifting? And particularly, I feel like the pandemic kind of
Yes.
changed it more drastically faster, because I remember I go to Franklin Ave in New Orleans, and they were building a new church,
Hmm.
and it really had just came online, and the pandemic happened, and you went from, you couldn't even fit in the old church, so that's
Yes.
why they built the new church,
Yes.
to just the numbers never returned the way that they were pre-pandemic. And so I think of that like a very old traditional church, whereas you are very like younger, you're vibrant. To your point, you got the business acumen
Yeah.
background. What do you feel, or where do you feel like the church as we have known it is going, or where is it today?
I think that the church has a responsibility to steward truth better, right? So, um, I think in reaching younger generations, that's really where the hunger is. People really don't have a desire to experience church in the way in which we did when we were younger. And what I mean by that is, when we were younger, the if you were going to aspire to be in the pastoral role, then you really had to project
Mm-hmm.
perfection, right? Like you really had to project that because that was the measurement. Like, in order for me to be in this position, I have to prove that I get it right all the time. I am perfect. And so I need to present that to you. And for me, even growing up in the church and seeing all of that, I'm like, no, no, what didn't y'all tell us?
yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so what I've seen, because I was just talking earlier from a lot of churches actually died in the pandemic. Some of them didn't come back. We are
Mm-hmm.
right now trying to manage the fact that we're bursting at the seams in multiple services. It's time for a new facility. But what I've seen is it's about hunger, truth. There are statistics that show that Gen Z actually, from a percentage perspective, they have the highest inquisitive nature around spirituality. So they are seeking, but it's about what you allow them to find when they come to you. So what people feel is if you're not doing your work to be theologically sound, if you're not, I mean, we can have some conversations. You know, I tell people there are so many scriptures people misinterpret because they won't go deeper. They won't read chapters before and after. They
We like
won't.
to pick little pieces out of the passage and then
Yeah.
not tell what happened before or after. So
Yeah.
even with you speaking on Gen Z being more spiritual, I feel like I'm a millennial, not Gen Z, but I feel like that's where I clash. Same deep I'm a Southern Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up, the hymns. It was all there.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was interesting was I moved. I started my first tech company in college. I moved away. I'm sitting in Austin, Texas, by myself, and for the first time in my life, I read the Bible. I had only known the Bible through church, through what the
Understand.
pastor said. I had never actually read the Bible or taken a really good look at the Bible for Sheena, for
Mm-hmm.
myself. Um, Also because maybe taking out of context and growing up as a youth in the church, it was like, oh, don't lean upon your own understanding. So I was like, let me not go into this Bible. Like, let me just wait into
You
the
should
book.
say that,
What
like,
what the
which I
pastor
love that
said.
scripture, by the way.
And so, but I'm in also by myself, So I literally, why this happened, I have no clue. Maybe it was God doing it. And I started to realize, like, wait, it does say that, but like, if I would have known it said that, like, two scriptures above that, like, I would have actually thought about that differently.
Yes.
And so I feel like for me, I align with Gen Z as far as like, I feel like I've taken myself out of religion and put myself more into spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
But I am, from the question that even Savitra asked, like, I'm curious even from like, what does it take this next generation? Because what I look at, like my aunt's church, like the way they do things
Mm-hmm.
is still the way that we grew up. And it was like the ladies come in with their big old hats,
Mm-hmm.
and they, it's still very structured Southern Baptist. Whereas like my nephew who's 15, the way he thinks about it is way more spiritual, like no religious. And we see way more non-denominational now in the
Mm-hmm.
South, which I feel like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was pure Baptist or pure Methodist. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really non-denominational as it is today.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that we've seen these multiple evolutions. So it's like when we were coming up, it was either like a very traditional expression or a very charismatic expression of church.
Mm-hmm.
And then for about 2 decades, we saw this shift towards what is kind of that pretty corporate
Yeah.
style, make it happen in an hour, lights. And, you know, I don't want to be here all day. Y'all got a coffee shop? Yeah, let's do
Yes.
this, right? And I think that now it's a hybrid of sorts because I think people are still like, look, have your stuff together enough to be organized and orderly. If you come into a level live experience, you're gonna see the presentation is definitely more youthful and
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, people are also like, but don't omit the truth. So like don't sit here and give me TED Talks every week if there's something more that I actually need to know and show me that you're willing to be responsible enough to take time being theologically sound. Because once you say a sound bite, it's for millennials and Gen Z. Once that soundbite is not true, unless you are going to be willing enough to come back and say, I got that wrong, right? People are done with you there. And I'll give an example of two scriptures, just to challenge kind of what people have seen for so long and why people get discouraged. A scripture like John 10 and 10, the thief cometh not but for to steal, kill, and destroy. And I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. People read that scripture all the time and they're like, the devil came to steal, kill, and destroy. That is not what that scripture is about. If you read above it and read the whole chapter and then even understand the context in the Old Testament that links with it, it's about false teachers the whole time. And Jesus was talking about the thief as false teachers. Now, once I get that truth and realize that you were too lazy to do the work to give me what was right, right? Or, for example, people go to Leviticus and they say, you can't get tattoos because Leviticus says you can't get tattoos, where it never said that actually. And if we go to the actual passage of scripture where it discussed what people try to utilize for that same thing where they were speaking to the Levitical tribe, uh, it was a specific a line of instructions so that they would not be confused with other tribes at the time. And in that line of instruction, it also said, don't cut your hair, don't shave, don't wear clothes of blended fabric, do not eat certain fruits, not to eat meat, shrimp, all these things. But you pull out of there one line that didn't say what you're saying it said, and you're telling me that this is truth according to the Bible, and it's not. And I think that there have been so many generations that the pastor said it is so. That shift started because we got access to the internet. So we had faster availability of information, and that has continued with Gen Z as well. I mean, yeah, Gen Z as well. So what I am seeing is there's this shift around, will you give me truth? And people, they want it to be polished, but they want the truth first, and then you can package it in a way that they can digest it later. I do think that we have to be open to hybrids. Some people are going to only be virtual, but I've found if you build a dynamic community and people know that that exists, we all want to be in communities that make us feel good and make us feel whole and make us feel embraced and that are authentic as well. So that's what I think the future of church is.
I love the fact that it's like lead with the truth and
Yes.
lead with all of it. Because
All of it.
I'm definitely the Southern Baptist who got the. When I got older, I was like, why is it that like all of us know the exact same verses? Because in Mississippi, most Southern pastors was literally teaching the exact same verses. Like we all know John 3:16.
Come on.
Like everybody, and got old and I was like, why is it that everybody seems to always preach the exact same verses? Even the Bible is like massive.
Yeah.
So I had my moments of questioning, like, what is the truth? Because we kind of always had those little passages. So I love the fact that you're like, lead with the truth and everything follows.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I really love what you said about just the different dynamics of how people will access, church and virtual, but also about the importance of community, right? Because the first time I hear you might be virtually, but then the second time I hear you, I'm like, man, I want to touch that community, right? I want someone to preach over me and then put their hand on my shoulder, right? Because it takes the power, for me at least,
Come on.
up a notch.
Yes,
So I want to feel it.
Yes.
And so any Gen Zs or people out there that you are virtual, when you find your community, be open to feeling that community at a different level.
I like that.
Yes. So something you mentioned to me that I love, and I was talking about going through different seasons in my life, right? And sometimes I could feel a season coming. Like, I could tell there's going to be a shift in my life coming soon. And it's going to enter me into a different season. But you use this phrase called life edits. And I love that, just like what that could possibly mean. But I would love for you to talk about, like, what does that mean, life edit?
Oh my, I'm very excited about it. So in 2020, I lost my mother to COVID, and April 6th. So it was very early in the process. I didn't get that chance to even have. Some people were like, "Oh, I didn't have to see people." It was like I didn't get that, or some people were like, "Oh, I boomed, my business boomed because I was able to focus." None of that was really my story in 2020. Just several weeks after being in our homes, and I lost my mom, so it just really turned my life upside down in a very unexpected way. And initially, because of who I am in resiliency, come on, resilient book, right? Plug. But who I am in resiliency, I responded to that initially with my what I felt was my leadership assignment in the moment, because I was leading people through a complex scenario that none of us had experienced before, and it didn't feel like I should abandon my post immediately. So I did an 8-week series on legacy. And then I took 7 weeks off. And during that time period, I started developing this series that I knew would be a book. I'm going to actually release the book in July, called Life Edits. And so I taught the series in a way that I knew I could take these 10 messages and turn them into a book. It's creative. So the chapters will be like Control, Alt, Delete, and Backspace, and Grammar Check, and all these things that are editing tools. But I realized that we all reach seasons of our lives that we actually need to edit because what we're walking into cannot be sustained by what we walked out of. And so I've seen so many people handle a new season, or they lose something that they didn't have to lose because they did not evolve so that they could really handle what was ahead of them. And that's really what it was inspired by. I started I was in a life edit. And so I'm like, how am I going to handle this? I have not felt this before. I wept in ways I never had. I felt so hollow when I lost my mom, and suddenly nothing mattered. None of the achievements mattered. It didn't matter that, who cares about a CEO when your mama gone? You
Mm-hmm.
like, that's all I care about. And so it really started as inner work in me, and then it spread out. Was still to date one of my um I think one of my favorite series that I've taught, and I'm more excited about what I've been able to do with the book. I've taken a lot of time to put it out because it's like I want to perfect it. I've developed some tools alongside it. Small group curriculum so that churches or just people in the community. Because it's very practical. People could do it with their groups of friends if they have book clubs. And then I just started developing, and you and I have talked about this,
Mm-hmm.
a coaching program aligned with it, because I realized that a lot of highly successful, high income earners reach a pivot point at
Yeah.
some point in time in their lives, especially if that success came when you were young. Because when you start achieving a lot young, it your identity becomes intertwined with it to some extent, both in you and how people view you, right? And so I find that for several reasons, whether it's, like for me turning 40 or somebody losing, a parent or whatever the case may be, I find that most people who achieve high success reach a pivot point where it's, why am I doing this? What's at
Mm-hmm.
the core of it? Is my purpose aligned? How do I get to the step that I'm really supposed to be doing, that my heart could be deeply connected to, and not just my pockets? And we kind of joked, we talked about this from a branding and all that perspective earlier, but I find that people who are super effective at guiding other people,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times they need assistance, or
Life
they
be a whole mess.
whole mess, and
Yes.
or it's like, even though I might know some of the answers, like, I want somebody to be there to help to guide me. Like, I
Yeah.
want the support in this moment.
Isn't it the check on the strong friend who's always you got
Yes.
get someone you
Yes.
check on the strong friend 'cause that's the ones always checking on everybody else and making sure
Yes.
they're good. In fact, in the end, they are the one who really needs the hug.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. I believe that it's going to really help a lot of people. And I believe that it will be work that will stick with me
Mm-hmm.
forever. Like, I think that when I was developing life edits, it really made me think about, I don't know if you all remember when Purpose Driven Life like went crazy. And it
Yes.
feels like that to me, that type of a message that really can outlive me as well. I hope it does,
Yes.
But my job is to put it out in the world, and then we see where it goes from there.
I love that. And I think you and I have something in common just related to the passing of our mothers, further driving our purpose. And that kind of being tied up into what we do and why we do it. And so when my mom passed away, I had this feeling of like such deep loss, and that a lot of what I was doing was because of my mother. Like, I wanted to be successful because I wanted to ensure that she had a better life. I wanted to ensure that she had everything she needed because she had poured so much into me and my siblings that she was just going to be good. And so when she was taken away from me, it was essentially a situation where I was like, what am I living for now? Like, what am I working this hard for now? And I had to like reposition myself and my purpose into focusing on, no, actually, she is the reason why I'm still doing this. And she is the person that is like guiding the direction for me
Yes.
to want to help so many people. And so I think that's something that we have in common, like our mothers still being so much of a guiding force in our lives, even after death.
Absolutely. In ways that, excuse me, in ways that can be hard for people to understand if they haven't gone through that.
Yes.
This is a club
Yes.
that you never sign up for. You're not like, oh, I cannot wait to be in the I Lost My Mom club.
Yeah.
But when you get there, it shows you some things about yourself. And it absolutely is thrust into new aspects of who you are. But a lot of times that starts with some level of, the only way that I could describe it is an identity crisis, because it's like, what do I do without my mom, and the why, and I know that I'm gonna have questions that I wanted you to have answers for, and I won't have you there for it. And my mom, she was a champion for me.
Yeah.
She was my person. Like throughout my lifetime, she's so responsible for who I've become. So yeah, it is definitely interesting, but hey, you done pretty well. And
You too, my friend. You too, my friend. I love it. Now you talked about mentorship, and you have you and your wife built Grow Black Leaders, and I know that it's probably an extension of like your mentorship and the work that you all do together. But what does that mean to you? Like just the idea of growing Black leaders.
Yeah, so oh, we're so excited about it. It's also a part of what would be legacy work for us. And so we're both passionate about building people. My wife by trade was an educator for
Amazing.
15 years. She is awesome, right? 15 years as an educator. And then she had this moment, she was like, she had kind of been letting me know for about 3 or 4 years. Yeah, I don't see myself doing this forever. And she had her own pivot about 3 years ago. And she said, I'm done with the classroom. Like, I'm really ready to begin a journey that looks like what I want to do the rest of my life. And when she really considered what that looked like, the investment in people is what excites her. And so she went and got, her, Maxwell Leadership certification. She started kind of looking into tools to grow herself. And she was thinking about how she wanted to go about doing that. Well, of course, I'm a people builder, so I love building people. I've been building leaders specifically for years. I have educational attainment there and a lot of experience. And she and I were talking. Actually, we were talking after a meeting that I had with Raymond Jetson. I call him Pastor Jetson.
Yeah,
still,
me too.
I'm like, you still Pastor Jetson to me.
Once the
Okay?
past, always pastor. Especially that's how I met you.
Exactly. So, but he and I were having lunch one day. And I had this epiphany, and I was thinking about, organizations and systems like Maxwell or Dale Carnegie and all these different aspects that we can go to that are these leadership development hubs. And I was realizing that for Black people, we have multiple organizations that do some level of leadership development. But we believe there was an opportunity to really create a hub that specifically focused on leadership development of Black leaders by Black leaders. And that's what really allowed us to go down this journey of building it. And we have a pretty vast vision for it. And we gave ourselves permission to move through it at the pace that felt right. And so we decided to do the first iteration of that as a podcast. We did a season 1. We're about to do season 2. We've been developing our own kind of curriculum around how we intend to not only develop leaders, but certify coaches over time to develop leaders. And we're going to go after our first Grow Black Leaders Conference next year. So we're really excited about it. Seeing where it becomes. I need to invite y'all to do rich lessons on the spot.
We'll be there. Hey,
Yes.
we're trying to do it all, but go check out their podcast as well. We'll make sure that we drop it for you all. Something that you mentioned, I was like, I need to put also on this, just your thinking around living with ADHD and being gifted.
Yes.
Like what that means.
Oh my God.
And
Okay.
how has that been for you? And I feel other people too. Some people, my husband included, has not accepted yet that maybe he fits into this box.
Over ADHD?
But yes, being a high performer.
Yes.
And having it. And you use the word gifted. I like the word gifted.
Yes.
Right. But we'd love for you to kind of go into that because there's so many people that fit in this box and maybe they don't even know it.
Oh yes, I think this my story will probably open a journey for people. So when I was a kid, I tested as gifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was a high achiever. I skipped a grade. It was all these things that were there. But even when I was a child, I would try to advocate and say, yeah, but it's that and something else. Like, and I felt that I was ADHD, but when we were growing up, talking about coming up, the stereotypes around ADHD was that you had to be a behavioral issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you needed an academic issue.
Yep.
Well, I didn't have trouble in class. I behaved and I performed. And so because of those two things, nobody was interested in understanding this other aspect that I was like, no, it's also this.
Yeah.
And for years, I lived like that. I even came into adulthood. By the time I married my wife, I was like, look, something is interesting about how I'm wired, and I know that it is a superpower, so I don't view it as a weakness, studying both sides of it, and I'll kind of get into it. Both sides make your brain kind of go into unique places.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I'm trying to understand this because for me, what I was experiencing internally is that my brain, the only way I could describe it to people, and then when I studied, because I'm twice exceptional, 2E, when I studied it, it actually defined it the exact way. I used to tell my wife, I'm like, I feel like my brain is a supercomputer and I have all these tabs open all the time, and I can't explain to you why I'm thinking about these multiple things at one time, or I'm all the way over here in my thoughts, or I could be having a conversation with you and hear the three that are happening around me, like weird stuff like that. And I enjoyed the things that were positive about it, but because people experience that part, they're like, "Oh, you're brilliant," and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah," but I also feel like I'm burning out, because that computer crashes at times. And what I was concerned about was, what does this mean for my future cognitive health? Like,
Mm-hmm.
my grandfather has dementia, and I'm thinking about, like, what are the conditions that I want to live in the future? How much do I need to know about myself? I appreciate how I think I don't really want to be on this earth. Like, if I were to truly be losing the
Yeah.
ability for my mind to think, I don't want to live that way personally. So that's what made me go deeper. And I was talking to my therapist, and I'm like, look, I'm ADHD. Like, we gotta get this part done. And so he finally agreed, and I got that confirmation. And then that is what led to the discovery, because I'm like, yeah, when I first read ADHD and I started really going deeper, I'm like, yes, I experienced this, and this, and this. But when I got to being twice exceptional, and I really started doing a deep dive on 2E, and this is like within the last few months,
Mm-hmm.
because my therapist didn't know about the giftedness. Had he known that, then he would have known gifted plus ADHD creates a unique wiring that is called 2E, and your husband may be experiencing that. And what it says is they mask one another.
Mm-hmm.
So giftedness, because of it, kind of creates a little bit more linear pathway for those higher performers, where that's where you like your structure, your stability, and your thoughts in as a gifted brain go into unique places. ADHD is where you just all out the box, and
Yes.
you're spontaneous, but it also is a gateway and a pathway to insane creativity as well. So what a person who is leading with both of those need to be really cognizant of themselves and what environments will cause them to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of loving the journey that I'm on now, because it's helping me. Like a lot of the things that I built in my life that were successful, like I got there on my own. I realized this is what I need to do this well. Now I have language behind it that supports it. I was able to give information to my chief of staff, because her role is to increase CEO effectiveness. So I say, hey, let me tell you
Yes.
about how we're going to increase my effectiveness. These are the elements that I need to do this right and well. And there's a host of I say a host of resources and information. I think that there are tools like books and things you can read. What I don't find, I'm like, well, you already do a lot of stuff, right? But I feel like there need to be more voices to
Mhm.
speak directly to it, so that people like me have someone to listen to say, this is what you're experiencing. It is normal. You don't have to feel bad about it. Yes, it is a superpower, but the reality is, it literally says, for people who have that 2E brain, if you don't put the right tools and resources in place, you will burn out on a regular basis. And I've had at least 4 like true burnouts in my
Yeah.
lifetime. Not like I need to go take a nap, like
Right.
I can't do this right now. So yeah, it's been a gift for me to find that out and to learn more about myself. Yeah.
Well, I'm learning with you, and you are definitely schooling me to another level, another degree. And I think about all the people I've met along the way where I'm like, but to your point, I feel like people feel that, oh, you're trying to say something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, not at all. What I'm recognizing, to your point, once you know it, you actually empower yourself as
Yes.
well as even people around you
Yes.
too. And so I think it's definitely something that you can look from an advantage point and
Yeah.
not a disadvantage.
It's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. I always say, I'm like, I don't want to be wired differently.
Yeah.
I just want to understand myself.
Yes.
It's like, if you are trying to, all vehicles are not built the same. So if you're trying to, if you're trying to repair one, or do maintenance on, one, utilizing what you would do for another, well,
Mm-hmm.
they're not the same. So now you are doing all of the wrong things, and
Yep.
you're wondering why you're not functioning at your optimal capacity. It's because you are not doing what you need to do so. So I have no problem with it. I love it. I think it's a superpower, but I didn't need to know how to like manage it well.
Unlock that.
Mhm.
Unlock that box. So what we want to know from you is, one, where people can find you. And then also, you already know, before we get out of here, we need to know, what is your one rich lesson? You might have a couple, but we need to know.
Absolutely. So you can look me up on the internet, RonaldoHardy.com, anywhere, any social media outlet, just at Ronaldo Hardy. So it's real basic. You can find me there. My rich lesson is that audacious authenticity produces optimal success. And I got this lesson back in 2016. I was in my second CEO seat. I was
Mm-hmm.
32, and I had some great things happen in my career where, from a personal brand perspective, I wasn't trying to build a personal brand, but my brand at that point had, reached a national status. And we were having a unique year in VR,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, Alton Sterling, and then the cops being murdered, and then the flood. But I was a really big voice in that time, and I was at protests, and I'm really leading my community. I did this series that was provocative at the
Mm-hmm.
church, and things of that nature. And I realized professionally that a lot of my ascension and my growth had come through assimilation. Like, it's these things that we learn along the way, even if we don't like doing them, or you don't even all the time know that you're doing the code switch. It's just these things that
Yep.
you learned along the way to be successful. And I had this epiphany. I had just started in my second credit union as CEO, and something hit me where I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna do that anymore, and I'm willing to risk it all. Like, I am willing to start a conversation, to start a journey that will allow organizations I lead to benefit from every aspect of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
One of those being that I'm Black. I'm going to be Black every day that I wake up. I cannot change that. I love it. There is a benefit to being Black. And I wanted them to understand that when I come into an atmosphere, part of the benefit of me being here, it starts with my Blackness.
Mm-hmm.
We are like the seasoning in gumbo. We are the crawfish boil for the
Yes.
boil, right? Like,
Yes.
that's how I feel about what we bring to the table. And so what I realized is that there was more of me to offer, and there was a different framework for how I would lead, that would show up if I were willing to overcome that fear
Mm-hmm.
of being audacious in my authenticity. And from that day forward, I was like, you are going to get every bit of Ronaldo, and he's unique and quirky and different and bold and expressive and all of these things, empathetic and caring. And, I'd say I come in the room and we're going to have a Hardy party today. Like
I
all
like
of
that.
that will be present. What I was not ready for, or what I did not expect, is one, how intriguing it would become to people, how much they would receive it, how it would change how I led, and how it changed the performance of organizations that I led as a result of it. And so now I'm just really free. I was telling you the other day when I went to the interview for Balance. I'm a bit of a sneakerhead. I like shoes. It is what it is. It is what it is. So like I showed up. I didn't wear a suit. I had a nice, button-up shirt on, some nice pants, and I came in there with my sneakers. And I said to them, I said, look, I believe in being audaciously authentic. I believe in creating cultures where everyone else can do that as well. Because if we all get a chance to lean in with all of what we have and all of who we are, we will achieve the most success. And I said, what you see is what you get. So if you love what you see today, this is what you're going to get. It will be no more and no less. And if you don't, it's all right. What that has helped me to do is to also make sure that I'm in the right spaces for me. I don't have to force myself into any place that I don't fit in. If I come in and I'm all of who I am, then the places that were designed for me will allow me to be comfortable and receive me as I am. And it has changed the game for success for me.
Mic drop. Beautiful. I have no notes. You hear me? Nothing to add. Thank you, Ronaldo, for coming on, for being a part of this Rich Lessons podcast. And we will continue to cheer you on and support your work. And looking forward to where the journey brings you.
Thank you for having me. I love what you all are doing. And I look forward to continuing to watch it grow, as I know it will.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.